And welcome to the Filmistines podcast, where we are challenged with trying to articulate a love for art and storytelling. Today I am joined by my quiet friend, Lucy.
Hello.
I'm glad you could join me today to discuss this film. What better way to celebrate World War III than talk about World War I? Today we will be talking about Edward Berger's 2022 film, All Quiet on the Western Front. I am no student of war films, just haven't seen an awful lot. I'm not sure why, but I'm very happy to report back that All Quiet on the Western Front is awesome. I loved it when it first came out in 2022. My favorite part of this film is the very beginning. It's almost montage-ish, kind of a strung out montage, but we move it pretty rapidly from battlefield to repossessing these outfits and other devices, and then being repurposed. And then we're immediately introduced to Paul and his friends and the onboarding and him getting his suit. It sets the stage so beautifully for how meaningless life is to war, to just the phenomenon of war. And the movie obviously proceeds to just be this machine of killing, right? It's filthy. I didn't know dirt could look so good. Any moment of levity is really more painful than uplifting. And this maybe so-called balance of having this real-time war battle kind of play out with Paul and his crew, his people, dealing with these politicians and them trying to negotiate the senselessness, the level of senselessness that they are facing. It's awesome. But man, I am very curious how you feel about All Quiet on the Western Front. What do you think?
No, I'm totally with you. What an amazing movie. In 2022, I didn't give this movie a fair chance, and I apologize to both the movie and myself. I agree with a lot of what you say, but let me tell you how this movie made me feel. I know you're not a big TV show, series, binger like I am, but have you ever watched a series, start to finish, or read a series? I feel it more in books than I do in TV. But when you finished it, you felt kind of depressed, but not like a sad depression, but like a hopelessness depression. You feel nothing. You look around the room and you think, now what? Now what do I do with my life? That this part of my life has ended.
Yeah, you've been reborn.
Yeah, exactly. Your time with these characters is done. And it makes sense to feel it in a show or a book series because, man, the hours that you put into that. And it's not common for me to feel that feeling in movies, but I felt it in this movie. It felt like some sort of desperation and almost how meaningless life is at that moment, at that specific moment when it's all done, when it all ended. Because as you know, I get emotional in movies, I get sad in movies, but it's just bits and pieces of the movie that made me sad. It's the dog that died. It's the couple that found each other. You know, it's the bits and pieces, the moments that I experience with them that make me feel sad. But to feel completely alone and hollow, that's not normal for me in a film. And I'm telling you, I didn't know how or what to do with myself after finishing this movie. It was indescribable about what I wanted to even do with my life next. Probably turn the TV off, right? But even in that moment, it was like, oh my God, now what? Now what? And I'm with you on the beginning being incredible for so many reasons. But yeah, it's that foreshadowing that we see, and specifically with the coat. how that coat goes from one soldier to him going out in battle, to him dying in battle, and just somebody taking it off of him and giving it to the next guy that's gonna die in battle. I mean, how could you not get that from the beginning, that this was not going to be a happy story? It was amazing. That small section just completely, fully represented this dehumanization of war. And like you said, how meaningless life to that specific soldier is. They're dispensable. They're just tools, like that jacket is.
Yeah, and we see that echo completed with the end, of course, where that green guy starts collecting the dog tags, right? Just like Paul was. That was like his first job in the trench. The cycle continues.
Yes.
The machine doesn't stop. Even when war has been paused or some terms have been reached, it doesn't stop. Because they obviously do a wonderful job spending all this time with Paul and his friends, and they slowly die. And how just awful it is to be boots on the ground. And then it reminds you, oh, Paul, just like the guy before Paul and this guy after Paul, they're all just statistics of this machine, you know?
Yeah, exactly. It's that book-endy thing that we like in films. And it was so wonderfully done here. And there's also this element of disillusionment of war in the beginning that just sets the tone so seamlessly. Because we start out with Paul and these boys, and they've been recruited, and they're being hyped by these generals, giving speeches, whatnot, making it sound like they'll be heroes. But we, the audience, know that they're being lied to. Especially when Paul goes in, we know it's towards the end of the war, when things are really getting bad. And you just feel sickened by this facade that they're feeding them, because we know the outcome. We know specifically Germany's outcome in this war.
Yeah, and they just put us at odds with, the generals and what have you, because they just repurposed all their coats.
Exactly. So it's not even a moment of these generals being hopeful and trying to boost their spirits in the moment and hoping for the best. No, they know what's going to happen. They know what they're feeding these boys. The film does an excellent job of visually telling us that nothing good is about to happen here, no matter what is being said. So I was just very astonished and surprised at how quickly and melancholically the tone was set without us even knowing who Paul is or what the rest of the movie was going to entail. You're already in that mood. Not to mention, and I'm no historian here, but World War I, in my opinion, has always been one of the most savage and brutal wars as far as fighting, the physical fight of it. The trench warfare, no man's land, is chaotic. But then we also have this rise of technology that we're introducing into war. So I love when it's represented in film. Like you, I haven't seen many war movies, but there's no doubt that World War I is definitely something horrific to watch. The score was very impressive. I like those distorted noises, these almost warning sounds that you hear throughout the movie. And I'm not sure I remember when they were played. If they were played at moments where warning was happening, or if it was played randomly throughout Paul's entire journey. But it gives you such an uneasy feeling that, and I liked how you said it, in moments of levity, that in moments of levity were painful because of that score. One of my biggest issues with the film were these nature scenes that we have sprinkled throughout the film. I'm not sure what their purpose was besides to contrast, but to what end? Was it just to make the war look more brutal? And I believe that was one of my biggest issues back in 2022 starting to watch this film, because the opening scene is, I think, some fox with her babies, and I didn't get it, and I still don't get it. They're very brief and sprinkled throughout these just very natural, scenic scenes that they confused me a bit. I also had a very minor issue with the pacing. The movie felt a little too long, especially towards the end, but maybe that was me just being completely in despair at this point, and maybe to even drive that even when you think things are probably could maybe be okay, that maybe Paul and Kat were gonna survive here. Like, no, just wait, just hold on. And then we have that final moment where it's like, I know we have this kind of treaty truce going on, but I'm still gonna send you guys like the last, what was it, 7 minutes, I don't know how long it was, of war to fight. And it added to that chaoticness. So a very, very minor pacing issue.
Yeah, the score in this and Conclave were excellent. Like, I can't believe how good they are, actually. Like, maybe my top 10 favorite scores of all time. They're pretty wild.
Yeah, I'd put this up there.
Yeah, the nature shots, they're kind of interesting. They are very brief, aren't they?
Yeah.
And I dare say they're really just there to parallel the savagery and maybe even naturalness of something like war. I mean, I'm no archaeologist or historian, but how long has war been happening between people, between tribes?
Forever.
Is it a stretch to say that it's part of our nature? And I will say about the runtime, it kind of reminds me of a Wolf of Wall Street kind of situation, or Babylon, movies of excess, where there's this intent on dragging it out.
Mm-hmm.
Just like this general dude is dragging out his own war, you know? I don't remember his name, but that general dude's not at war with France. He's at war with his legacy, you know, his history. He wants to be remembered as a hero too, like his father's father's father, right? In the Great Peloponnesian War. So I suppose it doesn't just justify it, like theoretically, I guess, but it totally earns that just pounding into the ground of what this film forces you to deal with Paul. Because that platoon or whatever group of folks, you know, they're at that little town. The treaties is resolved. They've agreed at this hour on this day. The war is over. There's that levity even. It's not quite as uplifting as that guy running off with the girls, right? But then that sergeant, you know, he has this whole thing, which is great. It's great that there's like these moments of like internal politics that happen in between people, inside people, that make them do squirrely things, right? Thucydides's trap, right? How many wars have been started over such little shit, you know? Because they cinematically, you know, dramatically pull a really fast one on you, right? Paul and Kat go to celebrate, stealing another goose, eggs, whatever, and then Kat gets got. And Paul drags him back, and the doc's like, shouldn't have even bothered. He shot him in the liver, poisoned his blood. Could you have said that any more, you know, gracefully, you know? Like, talk about doom and gloom. And the movie's not done with you, though. It sends Paul right back into the battlefield. That dragging that out from the moment him and Kat and the rest of the people enter that little town, I'm not sure how long that is, but I feel like that's where the film really starts to enter drag out mode, intentionally so, to, you know, just drag your face across that filth a little bit more. Just let it really sink in.
Well, it sunk in, that's for sure. Again, because you know, these characters aren't gonna make it. You've been told from the beginning these characters are not gonna make it.
But that is one of the great things about, you know, storytelling and movies, right? Is you've got this new ounce of hope that Paul is gonna make it. Cat's gonna make it. But then you're immediately reminded through X, Y, Z, A, B, C, and then the cycle resets.
Yeah, and it's that score. It's that score that
The score's insane.
is insane, and it's the giveaway, if you're paying attention, that things are not looking good for these characters. But like you said, we're all humans. Of course, we want that hope that Paul's going to survive, and he doesn't. At the last freaking minute, he doesn't. I can't help but to compare this movie to Sam Mendes' 1917 film, and how that film felt personal. Both films are subjective, but the 1917 film felt like we were right there with them. And yes, we saw some of the brutality of war in that film. And yes, it was two different sides of the war, with the 1917 film side winning and, of course, in All Quiet on the Western Front losing. This film felt like it was trying to say something. This film made the bigger anti-war statement, even though I felt more personal with the other film.
Yeah, for sure. Sam Mendes' 1917 film is, for me, it kind of runs into a distraction in the way it's told, its structure. So it definitely doesn't come off like anti-war. But it's like you said, All Quiet on the Western Front shows the machine first and foremost. It shows the filth. It shows these boys who want to see the world getting duped, right? It shows them wanting to go home. It shows you your friends dying next to you.
Yes, and 1917 showed your friend dying next to you, but what All Quiet on the Western Front also showed you is your enemy dying right next to you. In that fucking devastatingly awesome scene where him and the guy are in the hole.
The movie spends the bulk of its runtime showing you how meaningless life is in the context of war. And yeah, when Paul and that Frenchman are in that crater, it's one of those moments of levity where Paul is reminded that that's another human life. Because he, along with everyone else, is forced to forget.
Right.
Right?
And us, right?
On some level, of course.
Yeah, we want the perspective we're watching to win, to overcome, to kill the enemy.
Sure, it's the protagonist bias. Can we call it that? But that levity is crushed because at the same exact time, that Frenchman is drowning in his own blood.
Oh, man, yeah.
You know, when Paul realizes this great thing, that he's a brother too, it doesn't matter. 1917 is not trying to get that message across. I don't remember an awful lot about it, but I know that's very true.
And this movie shows a lot of why World War I is so nasty. In the beginning, when we're first introduced to the trenches, what are they doing? They're digging water out of it with pails. And it's going nowhere. It's still raining. And on top of that, they can't reach all the way to the top when they flame the water. So water's just getting back in.
It's like to just keep them busy from thinking, you know?
Yeah. And seeing Paul and that Frenchman, that interaction in the whole, us, the audience, being exposed to how long it could take someone to die. In a lot of film, it's pretty quick. And if it's not quick, it's off to the side or not so emphasized as it was here. With him drowning in his own blood, with Paul trying to put some gauze or whatever over it. I just feel like it did an amazing job showing the war without us having to be told about the war, or just having a character be devastated and not wanting to tell whoever they're talking to about it because it's so devastating. But we're being shown the devastation.
Sure, and to that point, we don't really even know who the good guy or bad guy is in All Quiet. We don't even know the mission, right? In 1917, there's a very clear mission for him to, run.
Yeah.
There's a wonderful senselessness to All Quiet that constantly reinforces that anti-war message.
Yeah, that's very well said. One thing I also enjoyed about these sort of parallels between our guys versus the generals and the people who aren't fighting, the film excellently showed the generals and higher ups, captains, I don't know the terminology, eating whatever they liked, eating in abundance, even having the nerve to say if these croissants were made that day and if, the chef had even tasted them, because how dare you give me something so stale.
Yeah, that seemed to be the biggest parallel between the two.
And what I really enjoyed about our guys here is that there was no hierarchy. There was no major or general or the person they had to report to. I don't even know who that person was, if they even said it. They were all the same person. No one was above anyone else. They were all experiencing the same hardships. Whereas I feel like in other war films, we do have that distinction that you, sergeant, and you, cadet, do the push ups. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and then when we see that singling the man out, it's the general guy. And yeah, he's kind of the bad guy. He's sending the boys out to fight to the last second. But he's not bad in the name of Germany. He's bad in his inability to value these boys' lives. So he's bad for, different reasons, I guess. Not political antagonist reasons.
There was a scene in the movie that, in all honesty, confused me for a bit, and then I had to think about what was going on. And I believe it was the restroom scene where they were on a bench and then Cat just pulled down his pants and sat down, and I was a bit confused on why he pulled down his pants and sat down. No one was grunting or making a face. And then they had this interaction, this deep interaction about Cat and his family and his son that died.
And the fact that Cat can't read.
Oh, yes. I'd forgotten about that. And I'm not sure how I felt about the scene besides kind of being a bit confused.
Well, they were pooping. They have to make makeshift bathrooms, right?
I guess so. I never gave much thought to that. Why the choice to have this emotional conversation while using the commode?
It's another example of balancing that levity with something very painful. They're pooping. It's this display of lack of privacy in this situation, right? Of course, it's funny at first, and then you realize Cat can't read. It's like, oh shit. That's kind of funny, but it's very sad. So it tapers us into something a little more painful. And then it hits us with Cat's son, died 2 years ago or whatever. This is like the first thing we've learned about Cat.
Right.
It's the protagonist bias. It's the context bias. We too, in the heat of the moment are losing sight of these people have lives.
They're individuals.
And at this point in the movie, obviously Paul and Kat are becoming close. They're trauma bonding. And this is no doubt one of those kind of manipulation moments in the film to attach us to Kat, to set us up for the most senseless death.
Yeah. He wasn't even killed in war. He was killed by a child.
Why'd they go try to take eggs?
Boys will be boys. And you brought this up in the beginning of this episode, how dirty this film is. And I'm with you. I like the dirtiness, all the costumes, all the props. Those trenches were freaking awesome. I love the small details of every set design. The dirtiness and the chaoticness reminded me of Sisu, which surprisingly it came out in 2022 as well. So it was a good year for dirty war films. I very much enjoyed the gas masks, the flamethrowers, the tanks, these things were, maybe not the gas mask, but the flamethrower and the tanks were definitely unexpected and just kind of a reminder of that technology that was in this war that you didn't think about. When I think guerrilla warfare and World War One, I don't think this tech. It's almost like that happened a lot later in life, not during this war. So it's pretty cool. How did you feel about the title translation? The literal German translation is Nothing New in the West versus All Quiet on the Western Front. Nothing New in the West, to me, kind of sounds like an episode or something so nonchalant.
Kind of funny, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely something much more foreboding about All Quiet on the Western Front. Because the title, in some sense, starts to play in to what you actually audibly experience. And these guys have these moments of quiet, and they're weird. And Paul kind of revels in that beauty in a shot or two, where these wastelands are just lit up by flares or the gunshots or something. And it's awesome looking. And again, I feel like it's just maybe one of these things that's, we have this levity and the beauty, and in just a flash, we're reminded it's a graveyard. All right, man. Well, thank you for watching this movie and talking about it here today.
You're welcome. Thank you for making me watch this. I probably wouldn't have watched this and missed out.
Do you have a budget guess?
This movie was long. It looks expensive. Not sure how expensive building trenches are. I don't know. You know, we're not at a set location. It's not a room we have to fill with objects. There's not really a lot of costume changes. So I'm kind of torn, and it's a foreign film. So I'm just going to throw 65 mil out there, and you do what you want with that.
Well, it says here that it was $20 million.
Oh, that's like high-end horror film budget.
Yeah, it is a horror film. Yeah, I don't know how this film costs $20 million and then Twisters costs $200 million. In what world does that make sense? This is one of the most beautiful films ever made.
The Twisters?
They're good-looking Twisters. It's a good-looking movie, Twisters is, but I don't know in what world to carry that thought a little further. Not that, like, Star Wars or whatever are the, best at storytelling, but they are visually pretty nuts. How's Twisters as much as a Star Wars film?
Hey.
I don't know. It's backwards, right?
Conclave 2 was a beautiful movie. Also a $20 million budget. This dude knows how to spend his money.
There are no box office numbers because this, of course, is a Netflix movie. One of the few good ones, mind you. So hopefully they feel like it was worth it, I guess.
So you're telling me my Netflix subscription helped fund this movie?
That's right, but don't you use your sister's Netflix account?
Oh, man.
So she's a producer on this film, an executive producer,
shit.
along with hundreds of millions of others.
That's awesome.
Well, over on Letterboxd with 928,000 people, they weighed in at a 4.0.
Good. This movie deserves a 4. I'm giving it a 4.5. Again, it's those nature scenes that I can't quite get past, especially with it being in the beginning of the movie. It's almost like those red screens in the zone of interest. This artistic choice to make me feel some sort of way that it didn't make me feel that way. So it just took me out a little bit. But I can't get over how this movie made me feel.
Yeah, this film is a solid 4.0 for me, actually, right on the money. It's such an excellent film. All right, man, well, thank you again for watching this film with me, and thank you guys for listening to this episode of The Filmistines. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Remember, we post every Wednesday and Friday with brand new episodes of The Filmistines on all of our free feeds, and every other Monday on patreon.com/Filmistines for Patreon exclusive episodes. Our next episode will be on the classic film La Bamba.
Yes! About time.
with good old Richie Valens and Bob. Please look forward to that. Remember to leave nice comments, thoughts, and ideas on our Patreon as well. Come subscribe. Please come subscribe. But until next time, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of The Filmsteins. Thanks for tuning in and joining us on our cinematic journey. We hope you enjoyed the discussion and gained some new insights and perspectives on the world of movies. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform, especially Patreon at patreon.com/filmsteins. And follow us on social media for more film-related content. We love hearing from our listeners, so if you have any feedback, suggestions, movie recommendations, or book recommendations, please feel free to reach out to us. Until next time, keep watching and keep loving the magic of movies. This is the Filmsteins signing off.